guys, Bipolar Barbie here. Now, a lot of you have been asking me a really important question, which is what is the difference between bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder? So I just really wanted to clarify that. I have both, and it is quite frequent that people will have both. Some people think that they've been misdiagnosed as bipolar when they're really borderline, or vice versa. I mean, it could be true, but in my experience, a lot of people that I have met with bipolar disorder also have borderline personality disorder. So I guess the way that borderline personality disorder comes about is parents not knowing how to deal with their children's emotions, not validating their emotional experience. And I think the correlation there between bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder, there is definitely a link, because someone who has bipolar disorder, even though it's normally triggered by either a traumatic experience or it manifests, I think, in sort of like your late teens, early 20s, I think there is like certain aspects of that are apparent through childhood. So I know for me, I think looking back, I definitely had symptoms of bipolar disorder my whole life. I think when your brain fully develops as an adult, though, that is when you get like the full-blown bipolar, and you'll probably experience your first really destructive episode. But as far as like having periods of like depression, elated mood, and a lot of the characteristics of someone with bipolar disorder, I definitely had some of those symptoms growing up. So I think a lot of the time, someone who might have bipolar disorder with incredible emotions, incredible mood swings, then often your parents won't know how to deal with that, and you might end up with borderline personality disorder as a result. But they are completely different. Bipolar disorder is like a biological illness. It's a malfunctioning of the brain system. It's a sensitivity to change. It's your brain's inability to properly regulate any changes, whether it be hormonal, which is why premenstrual dysphoric disorder is apparent in the majority of bipolar women, or whether it's like sleep, diet, anything like that. It's not just things like serotonin and dopamine, which I think are like the most prominent changes in your brain that bipolar disorder is really kind of categorized by and most well known for. So it's very similar to having kind of like diabetes, in the sense that your brain is always over or under compensating for these changes. So your brain will look at dopamine and serotonin and chemicals like that, and it will basically say, oh my God, we've got too much of this, we need to get rid of it. Which is what everyone's brain does when they're regulating different chemicals and hormone levels in your brain. The trouble is with bipolar is your brain will get rid of too much. And at the same time, when there's not enough, your brain will send the signal out, okay, we need more dopamine, we need more serotonin, we need to flood ourselves with these chemicals. And when I mean chemicals, the natural chemicals, endorphins, hormones that are in your brain. So then all of a sudden you get shot into an elated mood state or a depressive mood state. These like sudden changes is your brain just not being able to regulate things properly. Now, borderline personality disorder is very different, because it is basically what happens to people, the way that they develop as a person, and the psychological issues that they will have from a traumatic childhood, from a particular type of child abuse that is not often recognized, that is not widely enough talked about, and that is psychological child abuse. You can definitely develop it from all other forms of child abuse, like domestic violence, physical, sexual, like any form of abuse or traumatic experience as a child is definitely going to shape who you are as a person. Now, there are major differences in not just the symptoms, but also the treatment. So basically, for something like borderline personality disorder, treatments are sort of, if they are going to prescribe you medication, it's going to be antidepressants to help stabilize the depression that comes with it. It's also going to be a lot of therapy to correct the ways in which people fucked you up. and correct those parts of you that are really influencing and impacting your life. Whereas bipolar disorder is mainly medication based. Like, there is definitely a psychological component that comes along with depression and things like that. It's a lot of lifestyle changes, and most importantly, it's probably like mood stabilizers. And what the mood stabilizers will do is it will like sort of limit the way and in which and the extremes that your brain can over or under compensate, which instead of having these dramatic mood swings from up here, you know, down here and constantly fluctuating, it will limit that intensity and bring you down into somewhat of like a normal emotional range. So I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder after having my first manic episode, which was really, really intense. So bipolar disorder is basically having manic episodes and depressive episodes. Now, a manic episode is, I don't know, you would know if you've had a manic episode because it is extremely intense and might require hospitalization. Mania can be very destructive. Symptoms of that is so much energy, like an endless amount of energy. You probably won't need to sleep at all. You might not sleep for days. You will engage in reckless behavior because the section of your brain that tells you to put the brakes on, that reasonable, rational side of your brain is just completely switched off. Everything else is firing at full cylinders, but that part of your brain. You will just feel so great. You'll just feel on top of the world. You'll feel like you're invincible. You'll feel like you're sexy and you're confident in yourself. You know, sexual promiscuity. Did I say that right, guys? I don't know. Let me know in the comments below. But that is like really, really common as well. Just complete and utter reckless behavior. I jumped out of a moving car once, you know, snorting all sorts of drugs, like whatever, just like fully out there, fully intense. And I think everything seems like a good idea when you're manic. You know, you just want to make these lifestyle changes like on the spot because of how impulsive you are. That is a destructive part. You have so much energy, you have an endless amount of time and motivation. So you put all of these plans into action. It's like, yes, I'm going to buy a house. Yes, I'm going to like go overseas. I'm going to plan this holiday. I'm going to spend all of my money. I'm going to create this new business venture. I'm going to do this degree. Whatever it is, you've basically got either a get rich quick scheme or a get happy quick scheme. Like whatever it is, you are just get obsessed with some idea or thousands of ideas that you really think that you're capable of. You'll probably end up overcommitting yourself to all of these different projects. And people always have said to me, you know what, that's not sustainable. And I think that the bit that really influences manic people at that time is it is sustainable when you're manic. It's not sustainable when it all comes crashing down. Mania, though, it's not all good. It's really not. I mean, I can be doing like 15 paintings in a night, and that is amazing. But eventually the lack of sleep is going to get to you. The racing thoughts are really intense. So they're good at first when you can think quick, talk fast, you know, be on top of things. But eventually those thoughts are just going to get so intense, so fast, that they're just going to collide and your brain is just going to be like a really scrambled, messy, tangled ball of wool. You'll probably find yourself talking over other people, being really irritable, agitated. You will not have any form of attention span. You'll just be going from one thing to another, unfinished projects and just absolute chaos. You'll just become this whirlwind that just goes through life. I know when I'm manic, my room just gets like super messy. Sometimes it gets super clean too. It depends what I'm doing. I can either become really OCD and clean everything, or I can just be really messy because I'm on this project now. Don't worry about that. Oh, I've got art stuff everywhere, paint everywhere. That doesn't matter. Now I'm going on to this project. So that is, I guess, some of the symptoms that I experience with mania. Now, there are two types of bipolar disorder. There's bipolar 1 and there is bipolar type 2. Now, I suffer bipolar type 2, which basically means I never experienced like a full-blown mania, and I definitely don't experience psychotic episodes. Bipolar 2 experiences more of like a hypomania. So on the scale of like severely depressed all the way up to like psychotic mania, bipolar 2 never achieves the same highs. Not that it's an achievement. I guess reaches is probably a better word than people with bipolar 1. So you have to have a psychotic episode or psychotic episodes, plural, to be diagnosed as bipolar 1. More people are diagnosed as bipolar 2, and they do say it is like the less destructive or the less intense version of bipolar, but I honestly don't think that is the case. Studies have now shown that people with bipolar 2 might not go up as high, but they generally spend longer periods in depression, and they generally go to like a deeper level of depression. So that's the other side of bipolar. And I know for a really long time, bipolar was like, people only treated the manic episodes. And I think people kind of, I guess manic episodes are very outwardly destructive, whereas depressive episodes are really internally destructive. And I know in the mental health community, getting treatment is really hard. And treatment seems to only be available to people who are being public nuisances. If you've got a hold of yourself, if you're checking yourself, if you're making sure you have enough like insight and you're keeping yourself under control, then unfortunately a lot of the mental health out there just isn't available. It's not catered to you, which is really, really sad. Now I guess there's a lot more importance on treating bipolar depression, especially with suicide rates being extremely, extremely high. Bipolar depression for me, and I think this is like really the difference between borderline and bipolar, because the depression can seem somewhat similar, but my bipolar depression is biological. And for me, when I am in a bipolar depressive mood state, everything is black. It's like I've been sucked in a black hole. I honestly just can't see anything but darkness. Whereas when I'm in like a borderline state depression, it's more like this gray cloud above my head. This little cartoon style like rain cloud that just follows me around, and it just kind of rains down on me all the time. It's this dreary type of depression. Whereas bipolar depression is just like complete and utter comatose. There is nothing that I can do in that mood state. I'm so fatigued, I literally can't get out of bed. I don't have any form of choice. And I'm not saying that borderline depression is any less severe, but there is kind of like a moment there where I do have some form of choice. I'm just kind of choosing not to do the things because of how annoying this cloud is really above my head. And what triggers a borderline depression for me really has nothing to do with biology. It's more whether, you know, I've just had a traumatic breakdown, like if I've been triggered, if someone has triggered my borderline personality disorder, or if I'm just feeling really crap about myself, which is characteristics of being borderline as well. And most people won't get diagnosed with borderline personality disorder until they experience like quite a few relationships and they have already begun their mental health journey. And this is normally why borderline is one of the last diagnoses that you will have, because it kind of hides among like a lot of the other illnesses you might be suffering from. And it's very much categorized as like relationship drama with relationship conflict and the way that it affects your relationships. I did a video last night though on the other side of kind of borderline, where it's really a lot to do with low self-esteem and the way that you view yourself. So even when you're single, even when you've got literally like no one else in the world around you triggering you, there is still this kind of internal dilemma and turmoil that is really, really important to deal with and overcome, because that is just as destructive. So I guess that's kind of like the main difference. One is biological and one is psychological. The treatments are very, very different. And I think like there's a lot of information out there on both. There's a lot of online tests that you can do. I would definitely be doing both of those tests so you can see if you have one or if you have another one. But the main difference is borderline, you will never get a state of mania. You will certainly get constant mood swings, but the mood swings will normally be around, you know, some form of trigger. Whereas bipolar is sort of just more your brain has suddenly decided that you were going down or you were going up. Bipolar normally has a lot longer episodes. So a manic episode might go on for months. Even a depressive episode can go on for, like for me, my depressive episodes are normally like 6 to 9 months. Whereas a borderline is just kind of, it's very different. But borderline, I think, really affects me when I am in a bipolar depression vulnerability state of mind, or a premenstrual dysphoric disorder week, when I'm already emotional, when I'm already sensitive, and I'm already weakened by one of my other illnesses. And the only time in my life I actually get relief from being borderline is when I'm manic. Because it's like this shield, this armor that I basically get to wear for however long the manic episode lasts, and nothing can touch me. I'm on top of the world and I'm invincible. So not even borderline can tear me down. So I think those are the main differences, guys. Any mental illness is going to have some form of similarities. But bipolar disorder and borderline personality disorder are very different. It does really annoy me when people get the two confused, in the sense that they try and tell me, no, you're not bipolar, you just have borderline. Or no, you're borderline, so you can't have bipolar. Well, guess what? There's a lot of people that have both. And they're very different. The treatments are very different, just as all mental illnesses are. Borderline is very real, and it has probably been one of the most destructive parts of my mental illness. It's definitely made my relationships a living hell. It's made my life an absolute nightmare, because living under that cloud that kind of almost rains like a super cold water or even acid rain down on you, it burns your skin. Borderline is like being born without a skin, or having your skin ripped off you by your parents so that every single word that is ever spoken to you can just hit you where it hurts. It's like you have absolutely no armor. There has been this cancer that has been planted inside you, and the longer it goes untreated, the bigger it gets. It basically poisons every single cell in your body. Borderline becomes a part of you. So, yeah, I don't know. Anyone else have some thoughts on what the difference is between bipolar and borderline personality disorder? This video is just my own personal experiences, my quick thoughts, thinking on my mind, so I probably haven't covered everything. If I think of anything else, I'll let you know. If you like this video, if you think it's helpful, please give me a thumbs up and let me know in the comments below. Check out some of my other videos as well on borderline personality disorder. And if you haven't seen my old ones, do that. There's a lot of new ones being released in the past week, and I'm uploading like 3 or 4 videos at a time now, so like on a day. It's so many, it's ridiculous. I'm just feeling really inspired with these videos. So if you want me to do a video on something, let me know, and I will be more than happy to give my thoughts on a particular topic. So thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it. Have a good day or night.